Spread out across the
I've got a proposition for you. My arm hurts. I'm so sorry. Oh,
Stand up.
how you doing?
We got
Pastor Coates. Fine. Good to see you. No, I said he's gonna have my present. I'm biased, but they're
y'all can always I think it's important for council to be there. I can be here to this.
President Pro Tem, how are you?
How are you today?
Yeah. That's all elevators.
But I'm watching you in the morning. How you doing?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. How about fish? Look, there was fish in this.
It's okay.
It's what works.
How are you? Just right here, my dad too.
I understand how it is. Exactly.
Great, Chief. Good afternoon, and I want to thank Chief Jacobs, President Klein, and all of Columbus City Council for joining us here today. Bishop Clark, Elder Price, Anna Watson from the NAACP, many other community and faith leaders. Everyone in this room has watched the video of an arrest in our city on early Saturday morning. What I saw was troubling. It's upsetting. It's disturbing. It is not consistent with the values and training of the Columbus Division of Police. And most importantly, it's inconsistent with our values as a community. It erodes the public trust built by generations of hardworking law enforcement professionals. Just as important, what we saw on that video is inconsistent with the expectations of our residents. I've spent many hours last night and this morning talking and listening to the concerns of faith and community leaders, some of whom are here with us today. They have heard the outcry of their constituents. As a city and as a police department, we must remain vigilant in being transparent and accountable to the residents we serve. So I'm grateful to Chief Jacobs for her swift action in moving the officer off patrol and launching an investigation. It is critically important that we as a community make sure that we stay together, look after one another, take care of each other, but hold all of those who take an oath to serve and protect us are held to the highest standards in our community. We give incredible power to those in law enforcement, much more power than anyone else in our community. The ability to detain, question, arrest, take away our individual freedom. That is great power. And that comes with an awesome responsibility to the people they take an oath to serve and protect. This time I'd like to ask Chief Jacobs to give an update, share a few words, and then we'll take one-on-one questions. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Let me be clear. I agree with the mayor. We saw something on video that was concerning enough to make sure that we address it promptly, thoroughly, and take the officer out of patrol until we know more. It is a snippet of video that we will analyze in addition to all the other evidence that we are able to accumulate. But let me make it very clear that every person has the right to hold us to higher standards. We all have signed on to being held to those high standards. The media and everyone else has the right to investigate what goes on within the Division of Police because we are a part of the government. Everyone has the right to their own opinion because the Constitution affirms our right to free speech. And everyone has the right to hold us accountable because we've agreed to serve the public to the best of our ability. And when that fails, we will do something about that in the right way. Our values mean a lot to us. Professionalism means that when we see our actions on video or in person, that we don't have to question it. Respect means that we treat everyone with respect, that there's no question about how we feel about people. Integrity means that we answer up to the things that we do. Discipline means that we control our emotions, control our actions in the way that we've been trained. And our enthusiasm means that we care greatly about our community. So those are the things that I want to make very clear, that the Division of Police takes our responsibilities very seriously, and we will do the right thing in all regards, not just this particular incident, but in all regards where we believe that something needs to be looked into, investigated, and then if something is wrong, hold people accountable. So the investigation is only a few days in. There is more evidence, as the video, the cruiser video, the statements the officers are making, the witnesses are making, have been done. We photographed the person involved in this to see if there were any injuries. We have put our supervisor basically on special to get this done as quickly as possible. And then once that information becomes available to the chain of command, they will all make their recommendations to me as to what the outcome should be on that. The officer has been temporarily reassigned. I can't do anything permanent until after a disciplinary decision is made. But we will make sure that we get this investigation completed as quickly as possible. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be around for one-on-one follow-ups. Thank you.
Good.
Have you been able to talk to Officer Rosen in regards to...
It's not appropriate for me to talk to him at this point in time. I have to...
Investigators doing the internal work?
I have not, no.
Okay.
No, since I have to make decisions on this, it's...
Right.
I need to stay out of that until I know all the facts.
Okay.
I can't make a prejudgment.
Then at this point, what can you tell us that happened on Saturday morning? How did this unfold?
Well, the 911 calls have already been played in the media. We've got at least 4 calls on 911 saying there was a man with a gun that he was shooting, that he was threatening people, and they were worried that he was going to kill somebody. The police officers responded. There was some type of a confrontation with the guy that matched the description. There was a fight. One of our officers was injured, and then there was some flight by the suspect, and then there was an apprehension, and then the video that has been played turned on. So there was a lot more that happened prior to that.
If Mr. Anderson was kicked in the head, is that against departmental policy, and why?
We don't train people to kick people in the head. Now, if it's a deadly force situation where the only thing that you have to do is kick somebody in the head, then that would be within policy. We don't train it, but we say you can do whatever. We don't train you to poke anybody in the eye, but if it came to that, we would poke somebody in the eye. So our policy does not call for kicking in the head, but under deadly situations, you can use an untrained technique.
The FOP is saying this is a life or death situation because a gun was found on him. Was a gun found on him?
To my knowledge, to what I've been told, there was a gun in his pocket.
Can the department, or for that matter, anyone reviewing this video, can they clearly say that Mr. Anderson was kicked in the head?
I don't think we can say that right now. The video is played at full speed on the internet, and analysts often have to slow things down to see what they can discern. It's one angle, and only one angle. Much like a touchdown or a interception or a reception in football games with 5 camera angles, you can't always tell if contact was made. Video is recorded in 2D. And so it might look like I just hit Denise by doing that. You might have seen what looked like contact to you, but I didn't even touch her. So there are potentials that the camera does not see everything that actually occurred the way that it occurred.
All right, we got a
line.
Okay.
We got a line here.
Just quickly, spoke with Jason Pappas this morning, who did talk to Officer Rosen, who's maintaining he did not kick him in the head.
That will come out in the investigation as far as what his statement is, and then we'll decide what we think is the right thing to do.
If he kicked him in the shoulder, is that part of departmental policy?
Using force against handcuffed prisoners is an issue. We'll have to find out what was known at the time, what was actually going on at the time.
Okay.
And we don't know all the answers. That's why we're still not able to answer all of those.
So you don't know if your officer did anything wrong?
I don't know. I'm not making a judgment at this point in time.
You guys are up.
I'm concerned. That's why we're talking about it.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi. Good.
From Channel 4. Just tell us why you felt it was important to address the public on this issue.
Well, there's a lot of social media churning, a lot of people commenting, making judgments about what they've seen. It's a very small snippet, but nonetheless, people are making these judgments. They don't know all the facts, but they are nonetheless concerned, worried. We don't want our public to be upset about something that really we don't know enough yet. Once we know more, we'll be as open as we've been in the past about what we do. Video brings this new element to things. We've had other things on video that we've properly addressed that we thought were inappropriate. If this turns out to be the case, we'll do that. If it doesn't, then we'll let that be known.
I guess what are the consequences for something like this if it's shown that, he did do something wrong?
That he did?
Yeah.
Some type of discipline. A lot of times if something like this happens, it's a suspension.
We had in the press statement saying that the officer had self-reported that he had kicked the suspect. If there wasn't video, would the same action?
Officers report their use of force all the time. We had 140 some uses of taser last year. They were reported. We had 100 and some uses of mace. Those were all reported. When somebody strikes somebody, they report them. As part of our policies, our rules, they have to report their use of force. Sergeants are constantly investigating when officers take action that is called a use of force. We have a definition of all the different levels, and there's different levels of investigation for that. I have no reason to believe that he wouldn't have reported that. If he used force, you report it. That's the not just the policy, but the culture that we have.
Would there have been the same, I guess, action of putting him on non-patrol if there wasn't video, if he had just self-reported it?
Well, it's what we saw that concerned us. And so it's best. I mean, we also have to be concerned about whether or not somebody wants to take action against him or the officers on that precinct. When tensions are high, we have to make sure that everybody's okay.
Is there did the decision to put him on non-patrol, did that have anything to do with Officer Rosen's connection to the Henry Green case?
No, not one iota. These are two separate cases, and the grand jury cleared him of any criminal behavior in that particular case.
And I know that it's still early in the investigation, but we saw him kind of run on screen. Is there anything that we know at this point as to why he came in when another officer was holding him down?
The officer had put out an officer in trouble. He had that fight. He had chased him. The officer that had chased him was hurt by the suspect. And so there was the struggle, the flight, the apprehension, and then the officer in trouble that goes out, which is a 10-3, which is, all officers come help. They couldn't find him because he was low, down on the ground. And so the officers pulled up, there's cruiser video, I believe, that shows them running, trying to find him. And then I believe it was Officer Rosen spots him back where they had come from or a different area. They turn, and that's where he was running to his aid.
Was Officer Rosen the one that was in the fight, or was he the one responding to the officer in trouble?
Responding.
Okay.
All right?
Any other things?
I don't think so.
I was going to say we got some more people back here.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Chief, did you say you fast-tracked this investigation? Is that what I heard you say?
Yes.
What's an approximate time?
Well, generally it's 14 days for use of force.
Okay.
But what we just told the sergeant is just focus on this for right now instead of doing all your other duties in the meantime.
And
sometimes they have to do it, a little bit at a time.
what does that sergeant produce for you or for the department?
There are forms to be filled out, and then a narrative that is written that describes what people said and what their statements are, and then a recommendation that they make a recommendation as to whether or not they think the actions were within policy or not, and then that goes up the chain of command.
Ultimately to you, or could it stop along the way with a deputy commander or something?
Deputy chiefs have the right to rule on them if they are within policy. If they think that it's outside of policy, then it generally comes to me.
So we could get some sort of maybe resolution or the department's review within 2 weeks? Is that?
I hope that that's reasonable, yes. Okay. Who's next? Glenn? Okay. Come on down.
Chief, different people give us different interpretations of what they see in this video. What do you see in this video?
I see what looks like a kick to the head area and a prisoner that is handcuffed. That's what it looks like. I don't know the rest of the story yet. That's why we're investigating.
Is he restrained? Is he cuffed at the moment that
I don't
Officer
know.
Rosen moves
I don't
in?
know. I mean, what do you think? What does everybody think?
Mm-hmm.
Were the handcuffs clicked? You could be in cuffs and still be able to get out of them. So I don't know. I can't tell from my viewing of that video. I haven't had it analyzed, and people that can pull frame by frame by frame out. So I don't know, and I don't know what the officer involved knew, because that's what matters. Officers are judged on their use of force by what they knew at the time. That's what the Supreme Court of the United States of America has said you will be judged on, what you knew at the time.
So the fact that if police say this suspect had a gun on him, if he had assaulted an officer immediately before that, is that relevant?
Absolutely,
is that part of the
very
evaluation?
relevant. Right. The officer has to take in what they know of the situation and make a decision, judgment, and sometimes split seconds like this one.
What was it about the video that prompted you to pull this officer off the street?
the appearance that the suspect is handcuffed and that the kick was somewhere in the area of the head bounce.
The fact that this is the same officer involved in the Henry Green matter, does either one have any bearing on the other whatsoever?
Not in my opinion. No, he works in a area that is troubled by violence, and he every day goes up there to try to help people. He's made numerous gun arrests, trying to take guns off the street, and I have no reason to believe that there's any connection other than the fact that it's the same officer.
The family, the Henry Green family, has released a statement saying this fits a pattern of excessive force by this officer. Are you aware of that? Do you agree with that? What's your take on that?
I'm not aware of any pattern of excessive force at all.
For folks in the community who feel this does fit a pattern or fit a narrative of an overreaction by police when it comes to minority suspects, what do you say to them?
We didn't initiate this call. People that had been shot at, their house has a bullet hole in it, called us and told us to come. They gave us a description of who to look for. I see no relevance to profiling. I mean, we were called to that scene. They described who we should look for. That's who we found. And, the suspect had actions. He resisted arrest, and the officers apprehended him.
Yet you still took the step of pulling him off the street. We talked to one of those victims who had his house shot up and who called police for help. He believes the officers were justified in their actions.
Just like the people that disagree with it don't get to decide, neither does the victim in that particular shooting case get to decide. That's something that I have to decide, within the Division of Police, within our policies, our procedures. People that are unfamiliar with all of those, how the United States Supreme Court has made its own decisions about how use of force will be judged, are making their own judgment, which they have every right to do, but that's not how our officers are judged.
In investigating this incident, this video, what are the questions you guys will try to get answers to? What are the aspects you will look at?
What did he know at the time? What was he trying to accomplish? What did actually happen? We'll analyze statements. Everybody has a different perspective. So, Beth sees things differently than you do right now. You're seeing those windows, and Beth is seeing Rich Weiner. So everybody has a different perspective. But we'll try to synthesize all those different perspectives and see what they mean to us and try to get to the facts as much as we can.
Is it possible that he was rushing to help a fellow officer who had just been assaulted and didn't have a suspect?
Well, it's not just possible, that's what he was doing.
Is it possible that the FOP says that use of force was appropriate for that situation?
I don't know that they know all the facts either, so I think that we still have to wait for all the investigation to be completed. All right?
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Can you say?
Thanks, Chief.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just talk about what this might mean for policy in the future, potentially?
Policy? I don't think that it impacts policy. Our policy is very strong. It's met all of our accreditation standards. It's met the standards of the state of Ohio collaborative. I believe that it directs officers to do the right thing and to use force within the confines of the Supreme Court decisions.
Are you able to give more details on the timeline of the investigation, or what exactly?
Well, we're hoping that we'll have the investigation completed within a couple of weeks.
And then, can you give more details on the reassignment?
He's not going to be working a patrol assignment at this time.
And could that be a definite change, or just right now?
I can't say. If I were to do a permanent reassignment, it could be called discipline, and then that would perhaps negate my ability to do other type of discipline. So, have to wait and see. All right? Okay.
Given that this officer was involved in that Henry Green incident, I guess how do you quell the perception that people have? This officer was involved in two situations that were high-profile instances where his judgment was questioned.
What's the question? How do I...
Do you have any extra concerns about this officer, given that he was in two high-profile incidents.
I think the
where
grand
his
jury
judgment-
decided that he was defending his life when the shooting happened. So they're judged differently. They're judged on their own, and the connection is that it's the same officer, but there's a lot of violence in that particular area that he works, and he tries every day to, respond to calls for service to help people. So we'll look at this particular case with the information that we have at hand that we're able to use.
Okay, you ready?
Okay. All right, Beth, do you want?
I've got a couple.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Officer Rosen, are you able to say where he's temporarily reassigned right now? Can't say. Desk duty, though, is that safe to say?
Yeah, I'm not saying he's going to be sitting at a desk all day long, but he's going to be working.
You can't say which area at all?
I won't right now.
Okay. This officer had prior sustained complaints in IA. If he does receive punishment for this latest incident, as far as the spectrum goes, where would the punishment start at?
A sustained complaint depends on what type of policy was violated. So if it was, about not taking a report, and this one's about use of force, they wouldn't be progressed.
Okay.
It has to be the same or similar behavior to progress discipline. And so a prior situation, depending on how long ago it was, by contract I can only consider things for a certain period of time depending on what that level of discipline was. So for a minor, what we call a documented constructive counseling, that I can consider that for 9 months after it happened. If it was a written reprimand, I can consider it for 3 years. If it was departmental charges, I can consider that for 4 years. Now, not everything starts at that level. If it's critical nature, then I can start at a higher level, including a written reprimand or a suspension.
But if it's a different type of violation, you're not even going to be able to do progressive.
Correct.
That's what you're saying.
Correct.
Talk to me about how officers are supposed to be trained to back another officer up, because that's what it appeared to be happening in this video, and he responded. And
officers are trained to respond to all of our calls with a sense of urgency, to take the appropriate action, and to assess the situation and find out what needs to be done. And whether that means using force or picking up evidence or setting up a perimeter, they're supposed to determine what needs to be done and take the appropriate action.
is there a policy on being able to use force on a suspect that's already detained? Is that allowed?
Well, yes. I mean, there's training, there's policies, there's a lot of different legal updates, all that discuss when force is appropriate. And so the concerning part is, when it appears that somebody's being restrained. And that's what we're looking into.
But typically, officers aren't supposed to use force if someone's already detained and restrained?
Restrained, detained doesn't mean that they're not violent.
Okay.
We've had plenty of violent prisoners, even with handcuffs on. It doesn't mean that you can't use force. It means that if they are restrained, that you have to use force as is appropriate for their actions at that time.
And that's something you are...
And it's a case by case by case by case. I mean, it depends on what the actions are of the suspect at that time. We've had handcuffed prisoners spit at officers right in the face, which is a felony. You can't spit at officers. So if they used force against somebody that was spitting at them, even though their hands are completely bound, that could be a legitimate use of force.
How did the division become aware of this incident? Did someone see it on YouTube or media reports or?
Well, the officers reported what happened that night.
Okay.
I mean, as required, they called the supervisor and said, we used force. We need you to come over and investigate it.
So did Officer Rosen self-report and say, hey, I just kicked a suspect?
To my knowledge.
Okay. What precinct did this happen?
5.
5? That's all I've got.
Okay.
Is this officer
officer received any threats? Obviously, you're not saying where he's posted, and I hear that there is a fear of putting him out on patrol. Has there been any threats against him?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not aware of any, but I don't know that he hasn't. You read social media, there's all sorts of opinions out there about what should happen to him, so.
But you're not putting him out there for one reason, fear for his safety.
I think it's appropriate for him to be doing something else right now.
And how long has he been on the force?
6 years. A little bit more. All right? Thank you.